Hey, this is Mr. Mitchell with a video about ecology. There are the questions. Here is the content. Ecology. You can see it up here. Ecology is the study of how living things interact with each other and their environment. Living things, study of them, how they interact with each other and their environment. And a lot of what you will have in this science class will be in that category of ecology, living things, how they interact with each other and their environment. And as you can see, we have several terms here. This particular class does have a lot of terms that go with it. So let's go ahead and get to the next one. An organism. An organism is a living thing. Now, it's not just an animal. Living things can be things that are not animals, and you can see tons of them here in this photo. Trees. Trees have cells. They are dependent upon the environment for their existence. They are living things. So you have trees, plants, yes, animals, lots of things that are living things. All the living things have cells. And it's not just animals. So yes, we will study these living things in this particular course as well. Next one is habitat. And you kind of have to go back to organism to define habitat. You know, organism was living things. The environment enables organisms to live. The environment gives organisms food, water, and shelter. So that environment that enables organisms to live is the habitat. Environment that enables life. Now, I say life because I'm running out of room here. It's organisms to live. Environment that enables organisms to live is the habitat. A couple of interesting terms coming up here. Biotic factors and abiotic factors. I'm hoping you can read that well enough with the contrast of colors right here. The habitat for some animals is bad, and for other animals is good. These deer here, they could not live underwater, but they could live in this habitat where they are there. And same thing with animals underwater would have a very hard time living out here in the open air. And that includes these factors, biotic factors and abiotic factors. The living parts of a habitat are the biotic factors, living parts of a habitat. And we've already named some of the living parts of here. And the thing that might help you with this term is bio. Bio is a prefix that means life. So living parts, biotic factors, that means life. Which means abiotic factors you probably can realize is the non-living parts of an environment. Of a habitat, I should say. And you know, it really is maybe even more the non-living parts of an environment or a habitat that means more to us. The abiotic factors are things like water, sunlight, oxygen, and just naming those three are things that living things really, really need. So abiotic factors do tend to be quite important, I guess you might say. Plant photosynthesis, for example, is dependent upon abiotic factors, just as we are dependent upon abiotic factors, and we're dependent upon that plant photosynthesis. Now, underneath here, we have some, I guess you might call them, categories of living things. I guess maybe it applies to these two a little bit more than the other two. But the first category is a species. Now, we do have a video later on which will break down different categories that go into species. You may have heard of phylum, kingdom, all the way down to genus and species, but we're going to define species first. A species is a group of physically similar organisms. Now, there's more to it than that, but I'll write this down. Physically similar organisms. Physically similar organisms. Now, kind of the rule of thumb is if you have an offspring of a species and that offspring can produce another offspring and all are the same thing, then it can truly be called a species. You know, you can do some sort of genetic mixing, but at that base level where you can have reproduction will end up being what would kind of determine the whole whether something is a species or whether it is not. Let's talk about population. Population is members of one species in an area. Members of one species in an area. So let's take a look at this this area behind us here with the deer. The population of deer in this area would of course be the deer that are in these woods. One species, one area. Now we're not talking about all different kind of animals. We're talking just about deer. Same thing with trees here. The trees are living things. We're not talking about all the trees. We're talking about one species of tree, like an oak tree, or a maple tree, or a cedar tree. The population of cedar trees in that area would make up all the cedar trees in this vicinity here. What about community? Community is where you put all the populations together, all different populations in an area. All different populations in an area. So that would include all the species of trees. That would include all the deer, all the other animals. That's what the community is. But the thing that limits it is one area. Once we get out of this forest here, you probably get to what might be a different area. And kind of the limiting factor in that is they must be close enough to interact. So if you have like a stream that flows through here, that would probably still be part of that area because the animals would interact with the stream and then on the other side. But if you were to have, say, a desert on the other side of here, where animals generally would not want to go into it, they would kind of cling to this, then that would be a different area, and that brings us to ecosystem. Ecosystem is a community of organisms and their non-living surroundings. Community of organisms. I'm writing sloppily here. And non-living surroundings. So this is the most expansive of all these definitions. Community is only talking about living things. Ecosystems talking about communities and the non-living things. So why don't we go to a different slide and see what you can remember of these. See what you can remember of these. Now I do think I have a mistake down here somewhere. Why don't we put the word non right before living, and that should be a giveaway since we just went over it. I know it's not much fun having these long lists sometimes, but well, I've got it. Let's see what we can do with it. Okay, we have population. Population. Which of these would fit for population? Well, it's going to be this one. Members of one species in one area is a population. What about ecology? Well, ecology is a study of, and it's this one. Study of how living things interact with each other and their environments. What about the next one? Organism. Well, straight across. A living thing. Now remember, that is not just animals. Biotic and abiotic factors. You know it's going to be these two, but what order? Remember, bio is a prefix for living. So biotic would be living parts of a habitat. Abiotic would be non-living parts of a habitat. Looks like only 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 4 remaining amongst these 4. Which one of those 4 is species? It is this one, a group of physically similar organisms. You may remember whether if offspring can reproduce the same offspring and their offspring can reproduce the same offspring. What about community? It is this one way up here, all different populations in an area. Final 2, ecosystem and habitat. You know it's going to be right here. Ecosystem, a community of organisms and their non-living surroundings, which means habitat is an organism's environment that enables it to live. Well, I hope you did well on the quiz. You did not have to write down the quiz, of course. You just needed to write down the questions from before. So hope you learned a little bit about this. Bye-bye.